What is up, everybody? I am HoopsandHipHop, and welcome back to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. In last week's episode, I gave you guys my formal review of the Isle of Armor expansion for Pokemon Sword and Shield. We really got into the nitty-gritty of just my experience with the game, and overall, just in case you haven't heard that one to the fullest extent, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. There were some things that, could obviously be better. Nothing's ever perfect, but it was pretty good for what it was worth. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about, something I wish I didn't have to talk about, because we were so just set up for success, and then it all came crashing down. And that, of course, has to do with the announcement that happened on Wednesday. If you recall, there was basically, we had the Pokemon Presents presentation a couple weeks ago that stated it's where we got Pokemon Snap revealed, and then also in that presentation they were like, hey, we've got another presentation that's coming next week. And we were like, oh snap, something that's like getting its own presentation, that's got to be big. And then it happened, and we all were thinking it was going to be Diamond and Pearl remakes or Let's Go Johto, because how could it not? What else could it be? What else would get its own presentation? And then it ended up being a game called Pokemon Unite, and that ended up having a lot of interesting consequences. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're just going to talk about the game itself that got announced, the whole situation, and just break it down point by point, and give basically all of my general I gave my thoughts, like quick thoughts on Twitter and stuff like that, but this will give me a chance to really talk about it because I didn't cover it on my channel. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we get into the discussion, though, obviously I got to thank the people who make this podcast and this whole channel on UCast Studios possible, and that would be our lovely sponsors. So today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Due to the global pandemic, the deadline to file your taxes for 2019 was pushed back to July 15th, 2020. If you haven't filed for 2019 yet, there is good news. The Tax Defense Group can e-file your taxes for you. The process is quick, and for millions of people, you will get your money back. So, what are you waiting for? Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Are you thinking about starting a business or a side hustle? For all businesses to be successful in this day and age, you need a website. Writer Junkie offers website development, content writing, and SEO services for business websites. So call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. So, just to once again break down this situation. On Wednesday, we got an announcement. Everyone was completely sold that it was going to be something big. It was going to be a main series game at the very least. The two main candidates for what that game was going to be were either Let's Go Johto or Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes. Those were the front runners. But then we got a game called Pokemon Unite, which is basically, as far as I understand, League of Legends Pokemon. I don't know a whole lot about League of Legends, but it sounds like that this is basically Pokemon's version of League of Legends. And not only is it effectively a spin-off game, not a main series game like we all thought we were going to get, it's also a free, just a free-to-play game that also has a mobile equivalent. Like, it's on the Switch, it's on mobile, you can play cross-platform, which is pretty cool, but ultimately, it's a free-to-play mobile game is what it boils down to. And so the reason, basically, what happened was everyone just got into an uproar, essentially, and everyone was really disappointed. And the reason why we were all disappointed wasn't necessarily because of the game itself, which we'll get into in a minute. It was because of the way they went about this announcement. Because as I said, they had that previous Pokemon Presents presentation where they announced they would have another one a week from that day, and they said it was going to be for a big project, obviously giving it its own dedicated direct or presentation or whatever you want to call it means something. And so, like, the stars were all aligning for them to announce something big. Like, that's the kind of thing that says, hey, like, we're playing with the big boys now come this next week. Like, we're not messing around. We've got something big. So, like, every indication was main series game. Every indication. Especially because they gave a week's notice. Like, they don't even give, when they have, like, directs for Pokemon Sword and Shield, or Nintendo Directs, they don't even give you a week notice then. It's like a day or two. So to give a week notice is a big deal because you have to like simmer on that announcement and just wait for what's to come. So that was a huge deal. And then the speculation started at that point. And there was a lot of speculation that it would be Let's Go Johto because of all of the Johto-themed stuff in the background on Mr. Tsunekazu Ishihara's shelf when he was talking in the previous presentation. Literally, nearly everything was Johto-themed. And then on the bottom shelf, in tandem with that, you had a lot of Let's Go related stuff because there were the Let's Go Nintendo Switch bundles for Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So that just seemed like a no-brainer. Like that seemed like that was absolutely a hint at what was happening. And then people went on Junichi Masuda's Twitter, or not his Twitter, but his Instagram. They found his most recent Instagram post, which, admittedly, I will say, this was not my own, like discovery or whatever, just something that I'm relaying that other people commented on. His most recent Instagram post was back in January, so it was a while ago, but nevertheless, the caption was, "Let's go." Now, as you can probably imagine, all of this just whirling together seems without a shadow of a doubt that like, it would be Let's Go Johto. That is 100% what it would be, is Let's Go Johto. But when the time finally came, it was not Let's Go Johto. It was not a main series game. It was a free-to-play mobile spin-off game. Yeah, you can probably imagine why people would be upset about that, because every indication imaginable was saying that this was going to be a main series announcement. You even gave us hope that we were going to get Diamond and Pearl remakes announced, like, literally after, I mean, you could say that people have been wanting these since we got the Oraz remakes. So for 6 years at least, people have been begging for Sinnoh remakes, and you finally give them some kind of inkling that it's going to be announced, and then you give us a mobile game. So that's why people are upset. There are a ton of other logistics with this, though. First off, I do want to say I was definitely an advocate on Twitter when I gave my 2 cents there the day of, that you have to be, when going about this whole situation, you need to be very aware of like where you're directing your feelings, because it's completely okay to be upset about the way they went about this, because like I said, they kind of did a whole bait and switch type of thing, and it just was not a good way to go about announcing a game like this that ultimately, like I said, is a mobile game, is a free-to-play game, is a spin-off game, and they gave it the hype of a main series title. That was not a good way to handle that sort of thing. And so it's okay to be upset about that. But if you were basically, if you're upset at the fact that it wasn't a main series game just because you wanted a main series game, that's not cool either, because we just barely got the Isle of Armor expansion for Sword and Shield. We're getting another expansion later this year, and just last week and a half or so ago, we got Pokemon Snap announced. So we have got a ton of stuff right now going on, and a ton of big stuff going on for Pokemon. Not to mention that next year is the 25th anniversary, and you know they're about to go ham on that. If the 20th anniversary was any indication, the 25th is arguably going to be even bigger than that. And they ran a freaking Super Bowl commercial for the 20th anniversary. So they got a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of great stuff that we are getting even this year. So the idea that anyone could possibly be upset that it wasn't a main series game, that only works in the context of the fact that they sort of set us up to believe the announcement was going to be a main series game. When you think about it in reality, though, if it would have been a main series game, it would have been kind of ridiculous. So it was a little bit of our fault, honestly, in my opinion, just like it was a little bit of their fault for making us believe that it could have been a main series, like, bigger title. It's a little bit of our fault, too, for hyping that up and kind of just blowing it up bigger than it should have been blown up. Because they, if we would have looked at just the sort of, I guess, the logistics of what all is happening right now, like I said, with the Sword and Shield expansions and Pokemon Snap, it was pretty unrealistic that we would have gotten anything announced right now. And I sort of felt that way at the time when they announced that announcement, but that kind of just, that thought did go out the window when they sort of, once again, touted it as this, big, huge thing. So I was like, maybe they really do have something big. That's kind of crazy. But really, in reality, it kind of should have been clearer to us that it was pretty unlikely that it would have been anything big with everything else we've got going on. It just would have been way too much all at the same time. So ultimately, I think the whole situation is a little bit of their fault for hyping it up more than they should have for the game that it was, and it's a little bit of our fault for kind of not realizing that, hey, this would kind of be a little bit ridiculous, and just hyping it up more than it should have been. Both sides really did hype it up more than it should have been. We should have gone in with sort of just a let's see what happens type of thing. We should not have had any preconceived notions, and they should not have given us the opportunity to have any preconceived notions. So there's fault on both ends, but unfortunately it really does suck for them because with everything that happened, they've left a sour taste in people's mouth, and now that they've left a sour taste in people's mouth, even though it is kind of our own fault, they get the brunt of it regardless, and so it really does kind of suck. Especially now as we kind of transition into the other side of this argument, because there's nothing wrong with the Pokemon Unite game anyway. In fact, having a League of Legends-esque Pokemon game is actually a really good idea and a pretty big deal, even if it is a spin-off. Obviously, League of Legends is huge, so Pokemon kind of going into that genre is a big deal. And League of Legends, I mean, I've never played it before, but obviously it's a popular game, so it's a fun game. I imagine that Pokemon Unite is going to be pretty fun as well, especially because it's free to start. There are microtransactions and paid stuff you can do, but it's free to at least start. So there's a lot of positives about the game itself. It was really just the announcement that was handled terribly. And there's a lot of logistical reasons as to why that could have been. The Pokemon Company in making this game is partnering with Tencent, which this is all according to other people who have spoken to me about this, because once again, League of Legends is not my sort of thing. Tencent is apparently the company that handles League of Legends, if I'm not mistaken, and therefore they're developing this game in partner with them, and basically Tencent is a Chinese company, and what I have essentially heard from people who, I guess, sort of have a grasp on that situation better than I do, is that the goal with this game is to get Pokemon into China more, because I guess League of Legends is huge in China, once again, if it's made by a Chinese company, and so partnering with a Chinese company to make a League of Legends style game, I mean, in the Pokemon Company's perspective, that is the best possible way to really get your franchise into China with how sort of restrictive, I guess you could say, that China is with allowing like video games and other things into the country. So this is actually a really good idea for them, and it also is going to appeal to those people as well. So once again, if it's not the sort of thing that appeals to you, like, I mean, I'm probably not going to play it. Like, maybe I will just because it's free, but I kind of doubt it because, like, there's a million games in my backlog that I could play over Pokemon Unite that I would rather play, like Xenoblade Chronicles that I still haven't started yet, or just a bunch of other things like that. So, I mean, not really my thing, maybe not your thing, but there's a lot of people out there that it is their thing who are the actual target of this whole situation. So, I mean, it's sort of it's kind of a, it's not, I wouldn't say divisive game, but it's a game that has its own demographic. Just like Pokemon Smile has its own demographic. And once again, you didn't see anyone blowing up and just going crazy and throwing a tantrum over Pokemon Smile, because Pokemon Smile was announced as part of a larger presentation with other things and was not given all that hype. So once again, we go back to the botched announcement that should not have been given the hype that it was. That's ultimately the root of the problem here. However, just like Pokemon Smile, I mentioned this in last week's podcast, that Pokemon Smile was very, like, it was directed towards little kids, and obviously, like, toddler age kids, so little kids, as a way to introduce them to Pokemon as early as possible so they can start interacting with it, start knowing what it's about, and start growing with it and like growing to love it as soon as possible. So by the time they're 8 years old, they're ready for the main series games. They're ready for like actual video games. So that's another example of a game that has its very specific directed target audience that it's going for. It's not a game that they're trying to appeal to everyone with like the main series games are. And it's a good business move because they're thinking about the future. They're thinking about trying to get involved with the next generation and really make them fans, because that's honestly what you got to do as a business, is always be moving forward. And Pokemon specifically has really sort of had that be one of their key like issues and points of concern just like from the beginning, because Pokemon was a thing that was for kids, but then it transitioned into a thing more for adults as the kids who originated with it when it first came out grew up to love it and grew to carry it with them as well. So Pokemon became this big subject of who is it for? Is it for kids? Is it for adults? It eventually became a thing that's sort of like for all ages. And so just trying to balance those two has been the great conundrum of the Pokemon franchise, really since about probably like Generation 3, when it decided that it was going to be going on for the long haul. So from that perspective, a game like Pokemon Smile is really good for Game Freak. Or not Game Freak, because I don't believe Game Freak made it. But it's really good for the Pokemon Company to put out something like that, because it basically is them thinking about their future. And Pokemon Unite is another big example of that, where they're trying to expand their market, they're trying to expand their reach, they're simply trying to make more Pokemon fans out of people by giving them a Pokemon-themed game that is in the style that they already love. I mean, we all know that Pokemon, everyone has a favorite Pokemon, right? So if you give this game, Pokemon Unite, to someone who's never really played Pokemon before, so they don't really know a lot about it, maybe they know Pikachu, they know Charizard, but they don't really know a lot about it otherwise. And then through this game, they get introduced to some awesome freaking Pokemon like Lucario or Zoroark or Garchomp, and they're like, holy crap, this guy is awesome. They use him in Pokemon Unite. They start to develop that classic Pokemon bond, and they're like, oh my gosh, I love Lucario. Like, I really want to see kind of like where does Lucario come from? Like, I want to know more about him. They find out that Lucario comes from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and Diamond and Pearl could very well be getting a remake next year. So this is all just primer. I mean, I know that's kind of like conspiracy theory type talk. They're probably not making this game just as a primer for Diamond and Pearl remake specifically, but you guys get the idea of what I'm saying. They're just grooming people essentially to be prepared for their next big projects so that they can ensure that they're continuing to grow new fans as time goes on and people get older and other people move on with their lives too. Because, I mean, you can't, like, me personally, I'm going to be a Pokemon fan forever. Like, I will 100% be playing the games till the day I die. And I know a lot of people are that way too. However, you can't really rely on the same people, like the same fans that are supporting you forever. Like, it's just not something you can do. So it just makes a lot of sense from a business perspective to do this kind of thing, and I certainly applaud them for doing that. I really do enjoy when the Pokemon Company, like, are doing these kinds of things that you can tell are very tactical and very directed, and it has a purpose, and it's about something bigger than just selling the game and selling a lot of copies. This game is the type of thing that helps Pokemon grow into the future. It's basically like the Pokemon Smiles and the Pokemon Unites of the world are the types of games that are stepping stones, really, for what's to come in the future. These are the types of titles that really kind of, they don't carry the load per se, but they really do contribute a lot to the future of Pokemon. Like, they're the kinds of things that allow us to have Pokemon 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future, because they bring in new fans. They, like, imagine if Pokemon Unite, like, imagine the possibilities if Pokemon Unite really, like, grew a big following for Pokemon in China. That just, like, obviously China's big, it's a huge area, there's a lot of people there. Like, if you get a lot of fans there, it just opens up so many more possibilities. So really, like, there's really nothing not to love about Pokemon Unite itself, because it shows that the Pokemon Company, they're thinking about the future, they're looking to get more fans, they're being very tactical about it. I think it's a very smart move on their part, just from every angle. And it just makes it all the more ironic that the one thing about this that wasn't smart was really just boneheaded at the same time, which was the whole announcement thing. And it has also been stated by other people, primarily PD Winnell over on Twitter. That's where I saw, this is a statement that I saw from him. It's very possible that because Tencent is developing this game, and they're obviously this huge, like, company in China that's responsible for League of Legends and everything, it's possible that they asked that they could have a announcement of their own. They could have a presentation that was exclusive to their game, because it's the game they made. They don't want to be overshadowed by anything else, because they obviously have interest in it. So it's very possible that that is the reason why it was given its own presentation, when otherwise it's very much not a game that should have its own presentation. I could very much see that being a possibility. And even if that was the case, I could understand that, and I would be okay with it. However, once again, we come back to the issue of just the execution of that presentation is what was the bad part. The fact that it was its own presentation isn't even necessarily bad when you kind of consider all those other factors. It's just the fact that they hyped it up when they shouldn't have. Like, they should have kind of looked at it and been like, okay, what is this game? This is Pokemon League of Legends. Okay, that's pretty significant. That's pretty cool. But at the same time, it's a free-to-play game. It's a spin-off game. And it's a mobile game, essentially, because it can be on mobile devices. So really, it's like, it's a deal. Like, it's newsworthy, but it's not something that... It's not a barn burner. It's not something you're going to write home about. So, really, they kind of should have... I don't know if, like, ego was involved or something like that, but they kind of should have just really checked themselves at the door a little bit and said, okay, we got something that's cool, but it's not, like, super amazingly awesome cool. It's not Diamond and Pearl remakes. So, yeah, let's give it its own presentation. Let's do that. But let's not say anything about it either. Let's let the people know, like, a day before that, hey, we've got some more news for you, or let's just kind of like throw it up in a shadow drop type of trailer. Obviously, those kinds of things can work really well because we had Paper Mario, for instance. Paper Mario Origami King, that got shadow dropped. It's done really well because that surprise announcement surprised a lot of people and it got buzz because of that. So, like, I feel like there were other ways they could have gone about this that would have made the situation a whole lot better. I just don't think... Like, it kind of just was like one misstep after another. And the fact that they had that previous announcement presentation the week before probably made things a little awkward too, because I know personally as a content creator, when you're trying to schedule out all of your content, you want everything to sort of fit together well, and sometimes things just sort of overlap and just, it's basically like a jigsaw puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit together, and you want everything to be nice and smooth and flow really well. And sometimes you end up with these sorts of blocks of time where, whether it be the video subject or the video topic or just whatever the case may be, sometimes it just doesn't fit in your schedule as well as you would like it to. So, and I believe that's really what happened here. Pokemon had their stuff they wanted to announce. Tencent obviously had Pokemon Unite that they wanted to bring into the table. They had all this stuff. They could have just did it in one, but Tencent possibly could have been like, we want our own. So now they had two presentations they had to do. And, like, you usually don't have two presentations one after the other. It's usually, you get one every few months or something like that when it comes to like those direct style presentations. So now you've got two presentations. You can't exactly wait several months to do them both because you've got stuff like Pokemon Smile, Pokemon Snap they could have waited a little while on, but the other stuff was coming out right now, so it's like, gotta announce that. And then Pokemon Unite, I believe that's coming out later this year, so I guess they could have waited, but they were ready to announce both of these right now, but they apparently couldn't do them all in one presentation, so possibly for the reasons we already stated, and so they had two that they had to do, and I feel like that was kind of just probably a little too much, because unless it was a main series game that was getting its own dedicated presentation, that's the only way it could have worked. So I just feel like the timing was off, and then probably the logistics, as we've been talking about, with them possibly wanting their own presentation, that was off. So I feel like this whole situation started as just like, it basically started as like a snowman that was being made. Snowmans are really pleasant. They're really wonderful, just like this game. It's really pleasant. It's really wonderful. It looks good on its own. But then that snowman, its big old huge base, accidentally fell down the hill while it was being made. So this nice snowball, this nice little foundation of a snowman that was going to turn out really pleasant and wonderful, accidentally fell down a hill, and now it's a runaway snowball that's rolling down the hill, and basically it just becomes more and more of a disaster as it's rolling down that hill, because it's picking up, obviously it's getting bigger and bigger, it's picking up speed, and I feel like that's kind of what happened with this whole announcement. They had this game that was really cool, but then they were like, actually, we want our own presentation, so now you have to do two. And we want you to talk about it in the presentation and hype it up. And so like all of these missteps just started to kind of happen and just build on each other to the point where we ended up just having that sort of dumpster fire type of thing that is overshadowing what otherwise would be a perfectly acceptable, like, positively looked at game. If this was announced in any other regular sort of fashion, it definitely would have been a positive game. So it's really just the decisions made in bringing it out to the public eye that were the big misstep. And that is the conclusion we need to come to. Or actually, there's a couple conclusions we need to come to. Number one, the game is fine. Nothing wrong with the game. It was the problem in announcing the game and hyping it up and making it bigger than what it was, but also that was a little fault of the fans as well, in that we shouldn't have hyped it up in our own heads as much as we should have. And so, I mean, everyone is a little bit at fault here, but I definitely would hope that they would kind of think those things through next time. However, I do like the game in terms of it being a thing. I think it's going to be very positive overall. I think it's going to be popular. I think it's going to do well. And it's good to see once again that they're making moves with these types of titles to sort of ensure the future of the franchise, so we can have those bigger games later on down the line when they come. But with that being said, that is basically all I have to say today. I hope you guys had a great week. I hope you enjoyed. If you are new to the channel or the podcast, follow wherever you are. Leave a comment on the YouTube channel if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're new to me and my voice, I'm Hoops and Hip Hop. I do Pokemon content. You can check me out on my YouTube channel where I post tons more Pokemon content. If you haven't checked that out already, that would be very much appreciated. And with that said, I'll be back next Friday with another episode. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you guys have a great following week. And until the next one, as always, before I leave though, I just almost forgot about that. I'm glad I remembered. I do need to thank our sponsors one more time for allowing us to do what we do. So once again, make sure you check out the Tax Defense Group. Call them at 800-850-7973. Check them out at thetaxdefensegroup.com. They'll get you hooked up with taxes. And the Writer Junkie, if you need a business website, if you need support with that, they can help you out. 805-587-7966 is the number. You can also visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Shout outs to them. We appreciate them very much. And with that said though, as always, hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you next time. Until then, I'll check you guys later.